Hey guys, what's up? Pastor Josh here, and we are at another second helping. If you've never listened to one of these before or watched one, the idea of a second helping is that there's just stuff we couldn't get on the plate on the first time around. So what you hear in the weekend message, that's not all there is to it, but it's all that we had time for. And this week I wasn't preaching, but I still saw an opportunity for us to do a second helping because there was so much. If you didn't hear this weekend's message, we had 4 different guys from Harbor.Church get up and preach the word. And depending on what service you came to, you got to hear a different guy. Well, sitting with me is Kaileif Mitchell. You killed it on Sunday, man. I loved it. And if you got to hear him, that's because you came to the 11 o'clock service that we have. But we were talking, Kaileif and I and all the other guys, we were all kind of going over your notes, and we got to sit down with Pastor Ron and just look through what it was that God was showing you out of the story of Nehemiah. And you had said something to me during that kind of sermon prep time about something that stood out to you. And we didn't have time to get it in on the message on Sunday, but I thought we could do it and share it with these guys. And I think it was around the topic of trumpets, right?
Yeah. So it was, really awesome. When you're going through and looking at it, one of the things that kind of jumped out at me and resonated with me was this idea of the trumpet sounding. And so you have to understand that, at this time, they are under attack. They're constantly on surveillance. And it says in Nehemiah 4:20, when you hear the blast of the trumpet, rush to wherever it's sounding. Then God will fight for us. And this is kind of like this idea of communication.
Yeah.
It really just circles the Lord's protection around the Jewish people.
So like an early warning system for them if they're getting attacked. This is how they're going to know that trumpet sound.
Right. And so it made me wonder, where else do you see trumpets show up in the Bible?
Yeah, and I love that. When he said that, I was like, yeah, that is so true, because there are a couple of key times that trumpets show up. So you have the Nehemiah story where it's clearly God protecting them, but then you have the Joshua story. If you guys remember back, and this has been a long time since we did the series on Joshua, but he is early on leading the armies of Israel into the promised land. And the first big city they come up against is Jericho. And Jericho has this huge wall that's impenetrable. And so what Joshua tells his people is something a little bit different. He says, this is found in Joshua chapter 6, and it's verses 15 and 16. In verse 15, he says, on the 7th day, the Israelites got up at dawn and marched around the town as they had before. But this time they went around the town 7 times. And on the 7th time around, as the priests sounded the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. And so you see in that story, it's a little bit different because now they're not trying to build up a wall, trying to tear down a wall. And in the same way, though, as what you noticed with Nehemiah was the Lord's protection, this was part of the Lord's provision. He was going to provide for them a victory. And they not only defeat Jericho and the walls come down on those trumpet blasts, but they also get all the loot. They get to spoil that city and get all of that to give to God. And I thought that was a cool trumpet.
Yeah, that's great. There's another place, Josh, where the trumpet really shows up, and it's in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 15:52. It says, it will happen in a moment, in the blink of an eye, when the last trumpet is blown. For when the last trumpet sounds, those who have died will be raised to live forever, and we who are living will also be transformed. And so that really kind of talks to, what's God's plan for us, that trumpet sounding, and it just kind of, again, encapsulates the idea of, God's plan, God's best for his people.
Oh yeah, and I just think it's cool because it's one, Nehemiah, where you found this and kind of made us go down this trail, is it's all about building a wall up. And that trumpet sound was to, like you said, the Lord's protection for that. And then we have the wall coming down in Jerusalem, and yet it's still a trumpet sound, and it's still part of the Lord's, provision. And then you have this one, the trumpet that Kaileif just read about in the New Testament is talking about the second coming of Christ. And even in that moment, it's still showing the Lord's plan. That God's got us, and we just got to be ready for that trumpet sound. And I think you made a really good point when we were talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about the task. It's not so much about what you're doing as it is about the fact that you're saying yes, that you're coming in and listening to that trumpet and knowing that God is at the center of whatever it is in your life.
I think that's huge. I think that's huge. And you made that point as well as the other guys did during this past weekend's message, that, like it's not about the skill set. It's perfume makers and goldsmiths. It's just people that are willing to say, yes, God's got you. And I think that's cool that you saw that parallel with the trumpets, man. I love that because God's got you. He's got you. He's going to protect you. He's going to provide for you. And long term, for those of us that are long removed from the Old Testament, we still trust that God's got us. We still trust that, because I know, as you shared, you've put your faith in Christ. I've put my faith in Christ. We believe, and our job is that he's coming back. And so our trumpet sound is the one that says, hey, the king has returned, and we want to make sure we're busy. Just like the people in Nehemiah want to be busy building, or the people with Joshua want to be busy ready to go to fight Jericho. We want to be busy doing what it is that God's called us to do, man. And I hope that's an encouragement to you guys. Kaileif, thank you for sharing that with us, man. Thank you for seeing that and bringing that to my attention. I love it.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, I hope you guys get a chance to catch up with him as well as the other guys that preached this weekend, and lean into that, like what we're talking about, that God's got a plan for you and he promises to provide, he promises to protect, as long as we're saying yes. I'm so thankful that Kaileif and the other guys said yes to preach to us, and I'm hoping that God puts a burden on your heart and that you say yes to that, because that's going to make the difference in what God does next in our church and in your life specifically. So thank you again. Thanks, Kaileif.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great one.